Welcome to the Billet Slings YouTube channel. My name is Clive Murphy. I'm the founder and owner of Billet Slings. And if you're watching this video today, you've likely either just purchased one of our Model S1 slingshot frames, or perhaps you're intending to do so. So what we're going to do in this video is go through a very brief company history on Billet Slings, and more specifically focus on the design objectives that went into the Model S1 frame. We will then go through a brief setup on how you can attach a bandset to your frame once you receive your slingshot, and also tuning the band length to suit your draw length. We'll then go through a very short explanation of how to build a shooting box, which you're going to need at home, specifically if you want to shoot in an urban environment and recover your projectiles. And then we'll end the video off with a very basic shooting tutorial. We're not going to get into advanced techniques in this video, but just the basics so that your fundamentals are correct and you can get to shooting and enjoying your billet sling slingshot as soon as possible. So let's dive right in. To provide a very brief history on Billet Slings and the origins of the company, my wife and I enjoy a number of other marksmanship disciplines or shooting sports as well. And some time ago we came across modern slingshot shooting. We're based out of South Africa, and while there are a number of people shooting modern slingshots in South Africa, it's possibly not as widely known or as widely adopted as it is in other markets around the world at this point. So we in fact had to import a number of frames. We started shooting them and really took to the sport and started enjoying it. I come from a product design background. My other company designs and manufactures high performance and race brake systems, specifically for 4x4 and off-road race vehicles. And most of our brake calipers are designed and manufactured out of aerospace grade billet aluminiums. So our factory has a lot of experience working with these aircraft grade aluminiums, and that's where the idea was hatched to possibly design a frame or a range of frames that we would manufacture out of billet, fully CNC machined, not cast, and CNC finished, but fully machined from billet, and hence the name of the company, Billet Slings. To cover the basic design objectives with our Model S1 frame, a little bit of history. We decided that we wanted to come up with an everyday carry or EDC frame that would be lightweight, easy to carry by hikers, cyclists, hunters, outdoorsmen, 4x4 enthusiasts, etc. So we didn't want to go bulky, we didn't want to go heavy. We really wanted a pocketable frame in terms of the design. The original weight target that we set for ourselves was 150 grams, and we have come in at just under 150 grams, including the hardware that attaches the clips. While we're on the hardware, it's 316 stainless in a T25 Torx head. We went for really high quality fasteners out of Switzerland. For a premium product, we wanted everything to be premium, and we stayed with that vein with regards to the hardware. In terms of the material that the frame is machined out of, it's 6082 billet aluminium in condition T651. We have a lot of experience with this material. It provides a lot of strength at a light weight. In terms of the finish on the product, we've gone for a mil-spec, Type 3 mil-spec hard anodize. It's an attractive dark grey color and will provide a lifetime of really good abrasion resistance. In terms of the logo, it is laser engraved onto the aluminium, in-house by us, and that should again last the lifetime of the frame. Let's go through some basic frame specs just in terms of dimensions. The fork tips are 95 millimeters tip to tip. This puts it right in about the center of where modern slingshots are, 85 to 105. Of course, there are exceptions to that rule. The fork gap is right around 45 millimeters. We mentioned earlier in the video that we did want to allow the frame to be used by beginners right through to advanced shooters, and the generous 45mm fork gap will help beginners to have less possibility of fork strikes. The depth of the shooting window or fork gap is around 45mm as well. The overall height of the frame is right around 155mm and the thickness is 15mm. In terms of grip styles, I originally designed the frame to accommodate the common thumb brace and pinch grip styles, which seem to be most common in the world today. This detail here was incorporated for larger hands to give a really nice, comfortable pinch grip, and the thumb brace gives the opportunity for beginners to hold a little lower and for more advanced shooters to seamlessly transition to a more supported, higher on the forks thumb brace grip. While we're on that, people often ask us why we included a fiber optic sight on both corners of the frame, and the reason is this. We were going through a number of iterations. There were about 12 or 13 iterations of the frame over about a 6-month period, just trying to get the right balance to accommodate the widest variety of hand sizes. And my wife, who has very small hands, actually picked up her frame the one day, and instead of holding it with the logo facing her in a pinch grip which she prefers, she flipped it around and held it in a pinch grip with the logo facing away from her. And that allows the pinch grip to be used on this frame by smaller hands without exposing much of the hand into the shooting window or fork gap. So at the point where we realized that the frame can be held in so many different ways, in pinch grips with the frame rotated, we realized that it really was going to be important to put fiber optics on both sides of the fork tips to allow the maximum variety of grip styles. Moving down the frame, it's obviously heavily skeletonized. We did this, of course, for weight saving reasons. It did also offer us the opportunity to attach a lanyard, which is included in the kit when you buy your frame, and the opportunity to incorporate paracord wraps should we wish to do so for customization. I'd like to take a moment to focus on the sight design on the S1 frame. Of course, fiber optic sights have been used extensively on slingshot frames in the past, so there's nothing new there. We specifically decided to go with a 1.5mm diameter fiber optic cord, which gives you a bead, once beaded up on the edges, of about 2mm in diameter. This is great for taking shots out to distances of about 15 meters, which suits a lot of our customers, and really it does create a really nice vivid sight reference. We must, however, talk about customers who are wanting to take shots at longer distances, say out to 20-25 meters, some of our customers who are hunting. And you can, in that case, run into a situation very similar to what happens when trying to take shots at longer distances with handguns, where your front sight can in fact obscure the target because it's larger than the target in your sight reference at those distances. So if that does happen, we took that into account with the sight design, and for our advanced hunting customers, for example, you can opt to clip out your fiber optic by simply clipping in the center, and the fiber optic cord will pop out both sides. This now gives you the opportunity to use your sight as a peep sight, much like you would find on a shotgun, where light is gathered through the openings in the top, and you are now presented with a circular sight image. The human eye has an amazing ability to be able to distinguish between a full circle and an oval, and this gives you the opportunity to very easily see if you are holding your frame parallel to your target or not, simply by the changing sight picture. I'm not sure if I'd be able to catch this on camera for you, but possibly you can see on this white background what I'm talking about while using the sight as a peep sight. So there are a number of options in terms of how you would like to use your sight, and we feel that we've covered customers both shooting at short distances and extended distances. When hunting, you can actually find yourself, and again, it depends on what your holdovers are, where you hold your sight reference, where you can actually see your target through the peep sight, which makes for an interesting alternative. I'd like to comment briefly on the look and feel of our S1 slingshot frame. You'll notice that it's a very angular, edgy look, and I specifically did this to highlight the fact that the frame is machined from solid billet aluminium and not cast. Of course, you can go for a far smoother, more fluid finish if you cast aluminium, but I specifically wanted the look to instantly identify to the user or to anybody looking at the product that this was machined fully, CNC machined from billet aluminium. It would be impossible to mimic this edgy look with a cast aluminium frame. So earlier in the video, I showed you some of the race calipers that I've designed in my career, and again you see this edgy look on the product, and again it was done purely so that anybody looking at the product immediately knows that this is fully CNC'd from billet and not cast. Some customers may wonder what it feels like to hold a frame with this edgy design. Of course, you'd have to hold the frame yourself to experience it for yourself, but I can assure you that in spite of the edgy design, this very stealthy sort of edgy design, it is in fact very comfortable to hold. There is no point on the frame that will abrade your hand in any way. So in spite of the edgy design, a comfortable frame to hold, and it gives the frame a signature look. With regards to product options, at the time of purchase of your S1 slingshot, there is one no-cost option and then two options which are an additional cost, and let's quickly go through those. The no-cost option is simply your fiber optic sight color. The options are simply red and green. As I said, this is a no-cost option, and you simply select the color of your preference at checkout. In terms of additional cost options, there is the ability to have your name laser engraved down the side of the slingshot frame. We feel it's a nice option. It seems to be quite popular with our customers, and on a product of this quality, to have it laser engraved with your name, we feel is a nice option. Finally, we do offer a number of paracord colors. In terms of paracord wraps around the handle, we use a really high quality 550 paracord, which keeps its color very well, and there are 12 different color options which not only add some customization where the handle is wrapped, but also can build up the frame for larger hand sizes and offer a degree of personalization. All of those colors are visible on clear photographs on the website, and you're welcome to go have a look at those if it's an option you would like to consider. Finally, to wrap up the video on the S1 frame design, I didn't intend this to be an unboxing video, but I don't think it would be good to finish the video without showing the packaging that we deliver the S1 frame in. We wanted to use a really high quality IP67 rated hard case. We feel that a product of this quality should be housed in a decent quality case. So the frames come in a hard case, and just to show, they come nestled in custom cut foam, which houses the frame along with a number of band sets, your Torx, Allen key, and ammunition. This is my wife's personal frame. Of course, you will receive your band set sealed, but basically this is the idea in terms of the packaging of the slingshot. Before we move on to the next step, which is setting up your slingshot and tuning your active band length, we first need to establish what your draw length is. To do this, you're simply going to need a tape measure, your slingshot frame, and the Allen wrench that came with your slingshot kit. If there are two of you at home whilst doing this, that simplifies things slightly. In that case, I want you to pick up your frame, extend your frame hand, make a fist with your other hand, and place your thumb, which should be pointing in a straight direction towards the frame, under your cheekbone. Then ask the person helping you to take a measurement from the center of the frame to the tip of your thumb, and that will represent your draw length. If you're on your own, I suggest loosening the top clip of the frame, sliding the tab at the end of the tape measure between the clip and the frame, and just snugging down the clip. You don't need to use much torque when doing this. Then pick up the frame, extend your frame hand, and once again place your thumb under your cheekbone. You can then rotate the tape measure and take the reading of your draw length. Mine is 760 millimeters. This is an important figure. Make a note of it or commit it to memory. You're going to refer back to this draw length figure as you move on in the sport. Now that we've established what your draw length is, let's move on into teaching you how to tune your active band length to suit your draw length and attach a band set to your Billet Slings S1 frame. Perhaps just a quick history on modern slingshot flat band latex. Really what has allowed the sport to progress as it has over the past few years is the development of flat band latex and the use of it in slingshots. If you're from a South African background, as I am, we typically shot slingshots as kids that were made out of tree branches. The rubber or latex in the system was really terrible. Things like car tube were being used. Possibly later on, when slingshots became quite mainstream in retail toy stores and sports stores, there was tubular rubber or latex. None of those products perform like modern flat band latex, and really it is the modern latex and the development thereof that has allowed the sport to move forward and for us to see the performance that we are seeing from modern slingshots today, where projectiles ranging from 8 to 11 millimeter steel ball bearings can be shot at speeds ranging from 2 to 300 feet per second or so. At some point, modern latexes were being developed for the medical and biokinetic industry, the exercise industry. They were being done in different thicknesses, which provided different tension in exercise scenarios. And the slingshot world some years ago started using these modern flat band latexes. It has moved on even further from there. The latex which we use now was specifically developed for use in slingshots. There are some additional additives which provide additional UV resistance, etc. But really understanding that modern latex and the energy that it can provide has really moved the sport forward. While we're on the table talking about flat bands, band sets and latex, you will see that on the Billet Slings website we offer a wide variety of different band sets in different latex thicknesses, 5, 6, 7, and there are some more to come, as well as different tapers. Now, why do we cut our band sets or the latex in our band sets in a tapered format? The reason for this is that the more you taper the cut, so this is the end that fits into the frame, obviously that's the end that attaches to the pouch, and the more you taper the cut, the more performance you get out of the latex, at the expense, however, of band set life. So this particular cut on the table is tapered from 20 millimeters at the frame to 12 millimeters at the pouch. It provides a nice balance between a light draw weight and performance. But just for sake of example, if we had tapered this cut from say 20 to 14 or 20 to 15, we would have got a little bit less performance or projectile speed, but we would have got improved band life. So that is the balance that you play with in the sport when choosing what tapers and what band sets to shoot. You'll also notice on the mat here we have the 3 different pouches that we currently make available in our band sets, our P1, P2 pouches and P3 pouches, or blue, orange and red, which have been specifically designed by us to suit different projectile sizes. The P1 blue pouch is suitable to shoot 8 and 9mm projectiles. The P2 orange is 9 and 10mm, and the P3 red is designed to shoot 10 and 11mm projectiles. At the moment on our website, we do not sell pouches and latex separately, but prefer to provide complete band sets, which are tied in-house. All of our pouches are manufactured from a triple layer laminate, which we laminate in-house and laser cut in-house as well. So for ease of use, we prefer at the moment to supply ready-made band sets in a number of different options. One of the really enjoyable parts of the sport as you move on with your slingshot shooting is identifying which band sets, band set thicknesses, tapers, pouch styles and projectile weights are going to best suit your application depending on what you're wanting to do with your slingshot, be that target shooting, hunting, or perhaps an intermediate band set that can do more or less everything you need your slingshot to do for you. Let's discuss how to tune your active band length to suit your draw length, and also how to attach a band set to your Billet Slings S1 frame. We are going to be using 3 terms in this part of the video. The first is draw length, which we've already determined. The next is cut band length, which refers to the measurement from the end of the band to the pouch tie. And the final term is active band length, which refers to the amount of latex or the length of latex that is actively going to be stretching or elongating when you draw your slingshot. In the case of the S1 frame, the cut band length will always be 5mm longer than the active band length. The reason for this is simply that with the S1 frame, 5mm of latex are going to be held between the clip and the frame and will not be stretching or elongating, so they are not part of the working latex. So let's discuss what the correct elongation is. The latex that we use tends to be best in an elongation range of 4.25 to 5 times. It can in fact max out to a 6 times elongation, but at that point band set life will be reduced and your draw weight will be rather heavy. So let's stick in the range of 4.25 to 5 times. We had established earlier in the video that my draw length is 760mm. So if I divide that by 4.25, I'm going to require an active band length of right around 180 mils if we round up. I then need to add 5 mils to get to my cut band length, and that is the 5 mils that are going to be sandwiched between the clips and the frame. So I would cut my bands to 185 mils to achieve a 4.25 elongation. At the time of this video, all band sets delivered from the Billet Slings factory are in fact pre-cut to a cut band length of 185, so I don't need to reduce my band length at all. Of course, if you have a shorter draw length, you may have to cut yours back. Let's move to fitting the band set to the frame. Simply back out the screws on the clips, 2 to 3 rotations, no need to remove the screws completely. This will allow you to move the clips away from the frame. Then take your band set and be sure that the colored side of the pouch is facing the frame. At this point, I suggest, as a tip, marking out a 5mm distance from the end of the band set and drawing a line with a ruler. I've done this prior to shooting the video with both ends, and you'll see why shortly. Next, simply lift up the clip on the frame and slide the latex between the clip and the frame, centering the band in the frame, and push it towards the frame until you just can't see the line that you drew at 5mm, and then snug up the screws. Keeping the colored side of the pouch facing towards the frame, do the same on the other side. Again, pushing the latex just until you can't see the 5mm line that you drew, and then snug up the screws. At this point, torque the screws up nice and tight. You don't have to overdo things, but you want a fair amount of torque. Then give each band a light tug. This thins the latex between the clip and the frame, and torque them up one final time. And there you have it. You've successfully attached the bandset to your S1 frame. If you ever need to remove the bandset, the removal process is the exact reverse. As I said, start out conservative with a 4.25 elongation, and let's move on to attaching your lanyard. The final point to cover with regards to setting up your S1 slingshot frame is applying the paracord lanyard. You were supplied a length of 550 paracord with your kit. Simply thread the paracord through the frame and make a simple knot at a distance that suits your wrist width. There are a number of reasons that we recommend using a lanyard when shooting your slingshot, and we'll cover these in more detail during the shooting tutorial. Let's talk about building a basic shooting box. If you're going to be shooting a lot at home and you want to recover your projectiles, which trust me you do, then building a shooting box is essential. What I suggest is simply going down to your local retailer or hardware store and buying a plastic storage bin. Try and buy the largest bin that you can. Obviously, especially when you're starting out, having a larger area to shoot into is helpful. Then while you're at the store, pick up a couple of broomstick handles or 25mm dowels. You'll also want to pick up a 25mm hole saw or slightly larger, as well as a 6mm drill bit if you don't have one at home. When you get home, simply use the hole saw to drill a number of holes. I suggest drilling more than one, close to the top of the bin on both sides. Then cut the dowel or broomstick handle to length and push it through so that it comes out the other side of the shooting box. If your shooting box is not square, I suggest drilling an extra bunch of 25mm holes so that you can also use the shooting box in the portrait position, and cutting lengths of broomstick handle or dowel to suit those as well. Then simply drill some 6mm holes which you're going to feed some paracord or nylon rope through, and simply feed the rope through at a height that allows you to hang a target more or less in the center of the shooting box. Leave a little bit of additional paracord or rope so that you can adjust this height. As you can see, I've taught about 30 people to shoot with a shooting box, and a couple of shots have gone over the top of the broomstick handle and damaged the box on the other side. Finally, pick up some self-adhesive foam strip, stick some along the bottom. That'll just stop the projectiles from rolling out and make them easier to collect after your shooting session. Finally, you're going to hang some material over the broomstick. T-shirts, old t-shirts work very well, pillowcases. You actually want a lightweight material. I've used a heavy beach towel in this box at the moment, and it's actually borderline too heavy. If you go too heavy on your material, you'll start shooting through it. Lighter materials absorb the energy of the projectiles better. While we're on that point, do not weigh the bottom of the material down, and it should be just off the bottom of the shooting box to allow it to absorb the energy. If you weigh it down, once again, you're going to start shooting through the material. So those are the basic tips. You can attach a myriad of different targets which you can download from the internet. If your shooting box is large enough, you can even run competitions between two shooters by putting two targets up next to each other. You can also hang reactive targets like empty cool drink cans. Trust me, the time and money that you invest in building a basic shooting box is well worth it. In this video, we are going to get into teaching you how to shoot your Billet Slings S1 slingshot. We are not going to focus on very advanced techniques today, but rather on teaching you the fundamentals that will get you shooting accurately and consistently as quickly as possible. The first step in this process is going to be to determine which your dominant eye is. This is crucial for success early on as you get into slingshot shooting. There's a very simple procedure to determine which your dominant eye is. I simply want you to stretch out your arm and align your fingertip with a spot on the wall. Then close one eye and you will find that your fingertip remains aligned with that spot. If you close the other eye, you will find that the fingertip moves off to the side. The eye that remained open when your fingertip remained aligned with the spot on the wall is your dominant eye. Now, I want to mention that while it is true that much of the population, if they are right-handed, will be right eye dominant, if they are left-handed, will be left eye dominant, that is not necessarily the case. A large portion of the population is cross-eye dominant. For example, I'm right-handed, but my left eye is my dominant eye. This is normal and it's not a problem. The key point to remember is that your slingshot pouch must be held under your dominant eye and the frame in the other hand. So in my case, my left eye is my dominant eye. I hold my slingshot pouch under my left eye, the frame in the other hand, and I aim down the bands using my dominant eye. This is crucial for early success. So take the time, determine which your dominant eye is, and be sure to start out in your slingshot shooting holding your pouch under your dominant eye. Next up, we're going to cover your basic shooting stance. This is very simple. We simply need you with your feet shoulder width apart at 90 degrees to your target, with your frame hand closest to the target. Try not to lean forwards or backwards, as this is going to put you off balance. So simply feet shoulder width apart with your frame hand closest to your target. Now that we've established your basic shooting stance, next we need to talk about how you are going to be gripping your S1 slingshot frame. The frame was originally designed to be held with the logo facing the shooter, either in a thumb brace or a pinch grip. If you prefer a pinch grip and you find that the frame feels a little wired for your hand, feel free to rotate the frame and hold it with the logo facing away from the shooter. This will tend to be favored by shooters with smaller hands who prefer a pinch grip. Since we added a fiber optic sight at both tips of the fork, and the fact that the band attachment is in the dead center of the frame means that it's actually irrelevant whether you shoot the frame with the logo facing the shooter or the logo facing away. Let's talk about the pros and cons of a pinch grip versus a thumb brace grip. The pinch grip tends to be a very solid grip, provides good dynamic tension to resist band tension, and it's easily repeatable. It does, however, require you to cock your wrist at quite an aggressive angle. Some people find this difficult to do. Experiment with your wrist early and see what feels best for you. The thumb brace grip tends to have a bit of a less aggressive wrist angle, and some people prefer this. It feels more natural for them. There is, however, a little more variability in the thumb brace than there is in the pinch grip. I suggest experiment with both early, and when you find the one that feels most natural to you, stay with that. It's all about consistency as you build your skills. Next, let's talk about the angle that you're going to hold your frame at. If this is the vertical, I would like you to hold the frame in the horizontal or at 90 degrees from the vertical. Avoid rotating clockwise or anti-clockwise. You want to be at exactly 90. If you rotate clockwise or anti-clockwise from this position, it can affect accuracy in terms of windage. So it can affect your accuracy in terms of left to right accuracy. The next point is that the face of your frame should be parallel to your target. In other words, if you're shooting a target at eye level, it should look something like this. Shooting a target low should look something like this, or shooting at something up in a tree should look something like this. The points to be aware of here is to avoid overextending either the top fork tip or the bottom fork tip, as this will put different energy into your top and bottom bands, and that can negatively affect accuracy in terms of elevation, up and down. So you want to be perfectly parallel to your target. Finally, I'd like to talk about which muscles are involved. You want to just extend your arm that's holding the frame naturally. The muscle group that is mostly involved is your triceps. There's going to be a little bit of tension between your shoulder blades, and it should just be a natural extension. Avoid involving the bicep, which will normally mean that your arm is not extended correctly. And also don't use too much forearm tension, as this can lead to shaking, which will affect accuracy. So your grip on your frame should look something like this. Next up, we need to talk about the correct way to hold your pouch and hold the projectile within your pouch. What we tend to find with new shooters is that they feel more comfortable in pinching the pouch in front of the projectile, because this gives you the maximum control over the band resistance. The negative with this though is it creates what we call the speed bump effect on release. And when it comes to accuracy, release is everything in slingshot shooting. The speed bump effect happens as you release. The projectile bumps or jumps over the bone in your forefinger, and this can affect accuracy negatively. You'll also notice when pinching the pouch in front of the projectile that the thumb tends to be bent, also a negative. So what we suggest doing is placing the projectile somewhere along the bone in the forefinger or on the knuckle and using a straight thumb to grip it. What we want to see is that you're gripping the projectile on the side of the projectile and not in front of it. We also want to see this open V in front of the projectile. Lastly, it is important that your pouch tires are exactly opposite one another over there, or the tip of the pouch is exactly opposite. That will mean that you're getting exactly the same energy in the top and bottom bands. So to recap, we want a straight thumb. We do not want you pinching the projectile in front of the projectile or squeezing the pouch closed. We want you pinching on the side of the projectile, and you should see an open V in front of the projectile. Next up, we need to talk about your anchor point. The anchor point refers to a place on your face which you are always going to be placing the pouch hand. It should be extremely repeatable. You can experiment with anchor points from the cheek down to the chin. People often like to use a tactile area, such as a contact between the thumb and the corner of your mouth, or the thumb and the edge of your nose. I personally like to place my thumb under my cheekbone, and I find this to be comfortable and repeatable. Next up, we need to talk about the elevation of your elbow and your forearm. In a perfect world, we want to see that the elbow, forearm, and straight thumb are in a perfect alignment with the top band, and this should assist in accuracy. Some people find that their shoulder doesn't feel comfortable there and they want to raise the elbow slightly, which is more comfortable for them. That's fine, but what you want to do is avoid rotating the pouch either by raising or dropping the elbow, which again will create different tension in the top and bottom bands. So choose an anchor point that's repeatable for you. Keep your forearm and your thumb straight and in line with your top band. It should look something like this. Let's talk about how to aim your S1 slingshot correctly. I'm going to use a rifle analogy because many of our customers have had experience with shooting rifles or air rifles with iron sights. As we all know, shooting different cartridges through a rifle at a predetermined distance, in other words, different bullet weights and charges, will affect the impact point at that specific distance in terms of elevation. Different cartridges and bullet weights will impact either higher or lower. There's a lot of similarities there in terms of slingshot shooting. Different band sets, in other words, different energy behind the projectile, and different projectile weights will impact higher or lower at the same predetermined distance. While we're on this point, you may have noticed that we only supply one specific type of bandset and projectile with your S1 slingshot kit. This is done very specifically to try not to introduce too many variables while you are learning. So we tend to supply the kits with our blue target bands and a 9mm steel ball bearing as a projectile. These fairly light bands are easy to learn with, they don't put too much tension on you, and we would prefer you to start to learn how to aim and change your holdovers to suit various shooting distances rather than introducing too many variables in terms of different band sets and projectiles. Let's go back to the rifle analogy. The similarities between your slingshot frame and a rifle are as follows. Think of the fiber optic sight on the corner of your fork tip as the front sight or sight bead on the rifle. You can think about the top band as the barrel on the rifle. And then in some ways you can think about the rear sight on the rifle as being your anchor point with your slingshot. Now, as we know with a rifle, you will typically zero a rifle to suit a specific cartridge to get the bullet to impact exactly on the bullseye of your target at a predetermined distance. And you will typically do this on a rifle with iron sights by adjusting the height of the rear sight until your impact point is correct for the cartridge and the distance you are shooting at. In some ways, we can think of your anchor point as the rear sight on a slingshot. Now, it is true that by adjusting the height of your anchor point, you can adjust the elevation of your impact point on target. However, we would like to recommend that you don't get into adjusting your anchor point. We would prefer you to find a specific anchor point that feels comfortable and natural to you and stick with it so that it is repeatable and consistent. To affect the elevation impact points, we would prefer you to use your front sight and either hold dead on, hold over, or hold under your fiber optic bead, that is, to get your projectiles to hit the bullseye at the distance that you are shooting. One of the great parts of the sport is learning what holdovers and what hold unders are going to achieve on-target accuracy at different distances. So to summarize, we would prefer you to keep a single anchor point and rather adjust your hold over or your hold under to get your projectiles on the bullseye at the distance that you are shooting at. The last thing I need to discuss with regards to aiming is that you should not be seeing your bottom band when you look down the top band. In other words, you only want to see the thin line that is your top band. If you can see your bottom band, your rotation is likely out and your frame is not being held at 90 degrees. So you are aiming down the thin stripe made by the top band through the fiber optic bead onto your target. You shouldn't see the bottom band at all. The last point I'd like to cover with regards to aiming your S1 slingshot is that I highly recommend that you keep your non-dominant eye closed, specifically in the early days as you start learning to shoot your slingshot. Later, as your skills progress, you may choose to start opening your non-dominant eye to give you a wider field of vision. This is often great with advanced hunting, for example, but in the beginning, to guarantee the best chance of success, close your non-dominant eye and aim only with your dominant eye. Next up, I want to talk about the importance of a smooth, clean pouch release. If you are struggling to achieve consistent accuracy early on, the likelihood is that the problem is going to lie with your pouch release. If we go back to the rifle analogy that we've been using, the pouch release in slingshot shooting can be likened to the trigger pull in rifle shooting. And as we all know, if you have a jerky, uncontrolled trigger pull with a rifle, you are going to have poor downrange accuracy. The same applies with a jerky, uncontrolled pouch release in slingshot shooting. I have two tips that I'd specifically like to share with regards to achieving a smooth, clean pouch release. The first one has to do with the tension in your pouch hand. If you clench your fist with a lot of tension, in other words, in the bottom three fingers there's a lot of tension, you are going to be locking up the movement of your index finger. This means that the only way to achieve pouch release is to move your thumb, and you cannot move the index finger. This can lead to the speed bump effect that we spoke about earlier. So to negate this, I suggest relaxing the bottom 3 fingers. Have less tension in the pouch hands first. This allows you to move both your thumb and your forefinger and can aid in a clean pouch release. The second tip I'd like to share revolves around breathing. What I find is that if I breathe in through my nose while I'm drawing and then slowly breathe out through my mouth and time the release of tension on the pouch with the outward breath, that aids me in achieving a smooth, clean pouch release. The problem with the human brain is it doesn't like to be surprised. So what it tends to do is jerk a trigger pull or jerk the pouch release so that it knows the instant in which the projectile is going to fly. To negate that, we want to actually achieve a situation where the exact moment that the pouch slips free from your thumb and forefinger comes as a surprise to you. Now, that's not to say that you didn't make a conscious decision as to when you're going to take a shot, but once you've made that decision, if you time the release with an outward breath and it's almost a surprise when the pouch slips free, you're going to find that that helps you with your accuracy. So I breathe in through my nose as I draw and slowly out through my mouth and time the release of tension with the outward breath. Try these 2 tips. I think you're going to find that they help you with a clean, consistent pouch release. I'd like to talk about follow-through, and by follow-through I'm referring to anything that happens after the pouch release in your shooting cycle. What we often see new shooters doing is once they release the pouch and the tension comes off of the bands, they end up having a flick in the wrist or a push in the wrist. Now this is obviously happening because the bands were putting tension on the fork tips and pulling the frame towards you, and you were resisting this tension by pushing away. When you release the pouch and that tension is released, it often results in a push or a flick of the wrist. The problem with this is if this happens before the projectile has left the pouch, or put differently, if it happens before the projectile passes the frame, you can pull the shot off target. So if you're struggling with consistency, either pulling to the right, if you're a right-handed shooter, or right and down, I'd like you to focus on the following tip. After you've released the pouch, focus on keeping your frame hand as steady as possible until a second after you hear the projectile impact your target. So you are going to draw, release the pouch, focus on keeping your frame hand rock solid with no movement until a count of 1 after the projectile hits the target. This is a good tip to help you if you are pushing or flicking your frame hand to achieve a solid follow-through. New shooters often ask us, what shooting exercises should I use to get started? So the first thing to point out is that you were given 2 different projectiles with your S1 slingshot kit, a black nylon training projectile and a 9mm steel ball bearing. What we suggest is start with the nylon training ammo. The reason for this is it is possible that you are going to get some frame strikes. In other words, the projectile is going to hit the fork tips of your frame when you first start out. This is inevitable. Some people have it, some people don't. But by starting with the nylon training ammo, you ensure that you will not damage your frame if you get a frame strike. The downside to nylon training ammo is that it is not very accurate at distances beyond around 4 or 5 meters because of its light weight. So start at a modest distance, start shooting the nylon training ammo and concentrate on getting the fundamentals right. I suggest getting somebody to film you, especially early on, and watching these videos back to see if you can see any obvious form or function that you need to correct. Once you get confident with the training ammo, move to the steel 9mm ball bearings that were supplied, and then slowly start to move the distance out as you feel comfortable. Move to 7, 10, 12, and eventually 15 meters. Your goal initially should be to be able to place the majority of your shots in around an 8 centimeter circle on a paper target at a distance of 15 meters. To this day, I still start each shooting session for myself by shooting paper targets so that you can see where you're missing and try and correct those things. I'll make notes of the bandset and projectile that I was shooting in that session, and I'll even make any notes if there was something specific that I felt I was doing wrong or that I had to correct. I'm quite an analytical person, so I keep these in a file, and if I find myself struggling with anything, I look back to see if I have corrected this particular problem in the past. I then end each shooting session by shooting reactive targets. Things like empty cool drink cans make great reactive targets because it's always fun to see a target react when it gets hit. So, start at a moderate distance with your nylon ammo. When you feel comfortable that you've got the fundamentals right, move to the steel ammo and then slowly start moving the distance out until you can achieve most of your hits within about an 8 centimeter circle from 15 meters. Enjoy it. Before wrapping up this shooting tutorial video, I'd like to take a moment to focus on safety. While slingshots are obviously not as powerful as firearms, they can launch steel projectiles at speeds of up to 300 feet per second. So we would like to ask you to apply all basic shooting safety rules. In other words, always know what your backstop is, never shoot through hedges, trees or bushes if you don't know what's on the other side of them, and it goes without saying you should never shoot your slingshot at any other person. In terms of eye protection, band breakages and ricochets do occur. If you don't have a decent pair of safety glasses, we do sell a range of ballistic rated safety glasses through our website, so you can order a pair through the site. Always wear safety glasses when shooting your slingshot. Finally, if you have problems with grip strength, or if you're teaching a child to shoot the slingshot, please always use the paracord lanyard that was supplied with your slingshot. And the idea here is that if for whatever reason at draw you lose grip on your slingshot frame, the lanyard will stop the frame from hitting you in the face. Once again, please always focus on basic good safety rules when shooting your slingshot.